Here on Morning Prime, just as a side issue here, and to connect with what we are talking about, I'm really gutted by this story that there's a school in Ndhiwa which is closing due to lack of toilets. This is a concern there, and the fate of more than 400 students at Ogada Primary School in Ndhiwa constituency is unknown after school was forced to close due to a lack of latrines following the collapse of the floor of a school pit latrines. Public health officers from the Homa Bay County government closed the school indefinitely last week. And this is what we had yesterday on the front page of a Star. 1 billion shillings school bursary scam.
1.2.
1.2. This is what this is 1 billion shillings school bursary scams. And of course, regions affected were Wajir, Baringo, Trans Nzoia, Kiambu, Uasin Gishu, West Pokot. What really happens that we have this bursary, of course, is supposed to be supporting some students. We have the CDF that now the MPs have been really fighting for to make sure such incidences don't really happen where our students don't have latrines or don't have toilets. It's all about hygiene, and now they have to go home because of lack of these amenities. This is really concerning, and I think the officials there should be totally ashamed. This is in the Standard today. Make sure you grab a copy of the bold paper this morning. We're still continuing with our conversation, and this also will be on the table. Huduma number now is being rolled out. It will take at least, they're seeking to register around 36 million Kenyans. We had the president talking about the digital ID, and this is what Victor had drawn earlier regarding making of the Huduma number. Will Ruto finish this? That is the question that we'll also be looking at and telling you more about it. And this is where we are at regarding the tax evasion issues. That is now a hot catnip issue in the country, that Ruto is going for the jugular. He's saying, no, there will be no sacred cows anymore. This is not an animal farm. There is no one who will be exempted from paying taxes if you were to pay taxes. And we can see there were provisions that were earlier there, and therefore citizens who are now seeking to repeal the provisions that we have for former President Uhuru Kenyatta and Moi being exempted from estate duty levy. We put it on the table, and I want to hear from Brian Weke, and I also want to welcome Isaac Moro as well this morning. Brian Weke, first of all, this is regarding the sacred cows. This is not the first time we're hearing sacred cows being mentioned from political podiums. We had Mwai Kibaki, who came in, of course, when he was being celebrated at Uhuru Park, that there will be no sacred cows. But the sacred cows still persisted. With the fight of corruption, we've not managed to actually last that particular boil.
Yeah, while I accept that they shouldn't be sacred cows while implementing policy, whether it's on taxes or any other policy, it has to apply across board. Again, I just want to be very honest that this narrative of Uhuru Kenyatta is an old narrative.
It's a tired narrative.
It is a tired narrative. This Kenya Kwanza government, one of the key things that they actually promised Kenyans, if you read their so-called the plan, they said they're going to increase the tax base. That basically means that if 10,000 people were paying taxes at 3,000, they want 100,000 people to pay taxes at 1,500. Basically what that means is that you increase the number of people paying taxes, and what they pay is fairly minimal. And that's what we are saying, and that's what they promised Kenyans. Look at what they are doing. If for sure we are saying that there are no sacred cows, why don't we set up a team to audit each and every leader in this country? I can assure you, even the ones who are serving in Kenya Kwanza, the people who are saying they are worth 4 billion, they are worth 1.2 billion. How do you mirror that in taxes? If you've acquired to the tune of 4 billion Kenya shillings, ideally, 30% of that ought to reflect in your taxes because it means you acquired this property fairly and you equally pay taxes. I can assure you, if you go that route, including the sitting president, what is he worth? How much has he been able to pay taxes? Then when you do that, you look like a serious Kenyan. You look at that which you promised, the so-called bottom-up approach, is working. Where is it, Dibal, if you ask me? It is very simple. The problem we have in this country is two-pronged. Number one, increasing the number of people who pay taxes. And it is not Uhuru Kenyatta only. It is about every single Kenyan to fairly pay taxes. Number two, the problem we have, which this administration is not talking about, is corruption and wastage. No one is talking about it. You're busy looking for people who didn't pay taxes or allegedly evaded taxes, yet we do not deal with the elephant in the room. The former president is on record saying that we lose 2 billion in a day. If you calculate that in a month, it's 60 billion. If you calculate that in a year, it's over 720 billion. If you calculate that in 5 years, you can do the math. How do we deal with corruption in this country? How do we deal with wastage? Because the current government, they came in on a platform of ensuring that that is dealt with. It's business as usual, where when they meet in expensive hotels, the same narrative is perpetuated. Nothing is happening. And Dibal, I was very proud of the current president when he ran his campaign. He was the one who was determining the national agenda. Raila Odinga and the Azimio team were trying to catch up with him. That has changed. Now, as Waziri Kirwa is putting it, Raila is very good at, when you put him to the trenches, it's like a duck inside water. Currently, Raila is the one determining the national narrative. He brings an allegation, the president responds. So he's determining the national agenda, he's determining news, he's determining headlines. You cannot run a government like that. William Ruto is now being seen as Chebukati's spokesman. That is, it's not auguring very well. He's the one who says the way Chebukati was going to be killed. Spokesman. He's the one who said Chebukati was under siege. Spokesman. He's now the one saying, responding to allegations that Chebukati was in Raila's house. Spokesman. President should speak less and act more. This narrative of secluding and ensuring that you muddy Uhuru Kenyatta's name is a tired narrative. Let them move on to other serious and bigger issues. It will help them. Mwaura, it will help you. Thank you.
I think we can just pass the baton to you. It will help you.
No, I think, Brian Recca and I do a very popular radio show for the last 10 years. So I think that's why he thinks we are still in that show. But we like each other anyway. It's been a long time. Yes. I thought he would succeed Emilio Odhiambo in Suba. But maybe his time is coming. But let me say that it's very interesting to note that there is a law that protects some people from paying taxes. It's a shame, a very big shame. I mean, it cannot be acceptable that you can actually legislate for personal gain. And this is what we are talking about, state capture, where some individuals feel entitled to the benefits of this country. And President William Ruto, if you look at the economic analysis that we have done as Kenya Kwanza, is that the big taxpayers are the ones who are evading paying tax. That if you are to do proper taxation in this country, we will be able to raise 25% of our GDP. But the common mwananchi is paying because he has no way to escape. But the big people are able to employ tax consultants who are able to help them to evade tax. But also, surprisingly, that they went ahead and misused the power that they had in 1969, 1981 to exclude themselves from paying tax, especially on idle land that they themselves acquired from the state. Because at what point did you acquire this land? You acquire this land at zero because government gave you. Now you don't want to pay tax. At least if you have it then and it is in your possession, pay tax so that the government can function. And I remember very well, actually, President Uhuru Kenyatta himself was very categorical when he came to power that such people should be paying taxes. So we are not talking about individuals, but the past, if you are affected in one way or another, please, it is your obligation, because all of us here will tell you if you run any business. Right now, you cannot even get a tax compliance certificate if you have not paid that tax. And they could be as little sums, and nobody is being exempted. Before you would go around and get some waiver here and there, even penalties, they are not being exempted because we're in dire strait. Debal, we inherited a country that was at the edge of the economic precipice. We have actually had to borrow more, if at all we are to make sense. But there's a very robust, austerity measure. In fact, Brian Weke, to tell you, we want to reduce the expenditure in government to up to 900 billion so that we can be sustainable. Already the first 300 billion have been slashed off expenditure from what was the budget of the previous administration. And you have seen the Kenya Kwanza administration has not been very quick to take supplementary number 1 to the National Assembly for appropriation. Because we want to really calibrate properly. Remember, even when you look at our plan, we are also calling for what we call budget neutrality, where if you have to increase any expenditure on one end, you have to make sure that you get resources from another, so that then you do not increase expenditure unnecessarily. And that is actually the hallmark of administration. The problem that is there is everything was quiet. Things were moving on very well. Then when it came to paying taxes, some people now have realized they are under streets. I really don't know what Raila Odinga took from South Africa. We may need to have a commission of inquiry of what exactly, what energies he got from that end. But one of the things that is for sure, that there are people who are not happy. I was being told that they were paying 2,000 shillings per person from people from Githurai to attend the Jacaranda rally. Who can afford 2,000 shillings? At this economic time.
Sorry, you're being told what?
Yes, that they were paying 2,000 shillings per person.
But you don't have any stitch of evidence.
I stand by it.
No.
I stand by that.
That is hearsay.
No. I stand by that. Those people are paid to attend those political rallies, and I stand by it. And the people who are financing these ones are the ones who are using the very money they should be paid to KRA, so that government can be able to fulfill its obligation to Kenyans.
What favor you can do me is when you make such allegations that is, you provide evidence that if there was any M-Pesa transaction, you show that this is so and so that actually was paid this particular amount, or this is a receipt. That was an entry ticket for that particular Jacaranda rally.
Political money has no receipt, and you never get it anywhere. But it happens. So let me finish.
On a lighter note,
Brian,
I know Senator Mora for a long time. When you hear him make allegations, then he sips tea. He's lying through his teeth.
Let me say this. If you hear Brad trying to rebut in the midst of my contribution, he would actually be the one dispensing the money. Let me say this. This country really needs to move forward. We cannot be electioneering from day one to day whatever. For about 5 or so months, Kenya was actually moving very well. And when you make allegations by people like Jeremiah Kioni that there were bulbs that could not see during the day, I mean, really, that was switched off. I mean, you actually wonder what kind of, how do you even claim, for heaven's sake, that William Ruto was beaten by Raila Odinga Nyeri. Even Kabando Wakabano, who was actually a supporter of Azimio and he ran on NAC ticket, has actually said it is not possible. So you cannot keep on lying to people because these allegations are unsubstantiated. But there's only one thing I can give to them, Debal. They have been able to revive themselves from the Azimio Lilokua Linazimia. At least that one, you can say now there's something they can talk about. But because they thrive on lies and innuendos, really that is the case. And William Ruto is also a politician. He has every right to actually respond to wide allegations.
All right, thank you.
For example, let me finish. For example, when you say that Chebukati was in your house, did they just find themselves by the gate? If you invited them, what was the reason? And because the election never went your way, that's why you are bitter. don't you?
No, Ndhiwa.
Let me hear from Kiro, then we'll come to you, Professor. Yeah.
Well, I was enjoying the Honorable Mwaura make very strong statements and with a very high pitch.
At least I didn't see you sipping your tea before now.
Yeah, so I suspected he had taken also something. What Raila might have taken in South Africa. But there are a number of issues. One, we spend a lot of time on elections. And I do hope that Kenya Kwanza, from today on henceforth, will stop saying that they won. When you win, you don't rub it on us, because you win, you accommodate those who lost to you. That is the maxim that I used for the 20 years I was a member of parliament. Number two, you don't talk about your opponent every day. People will forget you, and they will focus on your opponent. Number three, when you win, remember there are millions of people who are also hurt. So the more you remind us that you won, the more you remind us that you have a beef to pick with us. But having said that, I think it is important that the issue of taxes, we focus on taxes regardless of who the taxpayer is. Whatever is due from me, whatever is due from any other person should be paid, and should be paid in good time. But also, we should also remember that these taxes, once paid, they must be seen to be working. Why am I saying that? Kibaki was able to collect taxes from Kenyans and other revenues internally to the extent of our budget was 93% funded domestically by mobilizing domestic resources. Why? It is because people had faith in him that whatever he was asking the money for, it was for good purposes. Remember, in the early years of Kibaki administration, some policeman was arrested for asking for a bribe by Raia. And that was the spirit that we lost a few days later, because some of our colleagues fell into the same trap that many African leaders fall. And therefore, I think our main problem is not just payment of tax. It is how well are you going to take care of those taxes? Because as it has been said, pilferage and wastage is a third of the budget every year since independence, except for a period, a short period or so. And therefore, this money should not really just be collected for the sake of collecting money from people and punishing them, but it should be money that is going to be used for the purpose of doing that. Finally, I think it is important also for Kenya Kwanza to realize that while you talk about all these raft of issues, including privatization, ask yourself, why were these institutions created? Why have they gone down? And finally, how can we make them better managed so that we do not have to say we are selling them through this door, and through the back door we buy them? We'll just be perpetuating the corruption that we've known in the past, where some institutions were sold, and after selling, the same individuals became national heroes because they had made money, because it's a serious problem. Finally, I think corruption is a cultural issue in Kenya. And cultural issue because the leaders at the top have not been leading by example. And therefore, what we need to do is just to fight it the much we can, and fight it without labeling tags on individuals. Because if that law was there for the 10 years that Uhuru and Ruto were in government, I would have expected him to raise that concern about non-payment of taxes by the president and by the deputy president. Because we cannot say now it is Uhuru who was not paying taxes on certain transactions, and yet it was actually the presidency. So these are some of the things we should be honest as we discuss. Thank you.
Well, on the issue of, because the president is questioning why the former president or the former Azimio Umoja presidential candidate was coming up to the public 5 months after the act, yet he had to present the opportunity to present, this particular evidence to the Supreme Court. If this was a solid evidence that they had, and this was one of the issues that Chebukati came to the house of Honorable Raila Odinga, we've never heard him speaking about it for the last 5 good months. Don't you think we've really passed that particular junction, even for him raising these issues? Now, how will we tell that also what is happening with the statement from the president that this is politically instigated? You were raising the issue of why he should not be talking about the opposition. But it's the opposition who are raising all these rukus. Well, the country was fairly silent. People were moving on, right? Until now, I don't know what you said that Raila took in South Africa. He came back, energized, revitalized. He's a new man and reinvented. Yes. And yes, he's actually the one who is raising these issues of the election malpractice.
Raila is a political animal. He knows all these functions at the church, like the one in Kirinyaga, where Raila's name was mentioned about 23 times. And Jesus Christ, I think, twice or so. So he knows this is campaign in preparation for 2027. So he has to counter that, because...
You actually sat down and actually...
about 23, 24 times.
Jesus was mentioned two times. How many times?
23.
No, Jesus.
Twice. Jesus about twice or thrice.
Twice.
Yeah.
Who is the Messiah? Because Jesus remains the Messiah. Let's hear from Honorable Professor Getile.
One thing I like about the politicians, and I hope the Kenyans are learning about them, they tell you everything with a straight face and completely avoid facts. Maura just told us here, one of the priorities of Kenya Kwanza is to arrest wastage. That's what they just said. The other day, these fellows were in a UK, in a 5-star hotel. They couldn't have stayed in the state house in Mangufuli style. Today, they are in Mombasa. We have plenty of hotels in Nairobi if they are not chasing pandemics. So let's face it, there is no attempt to arrest wastage so far. Maybe it will come later because this is early. But right now, there isn't. So, but the beauty with these politicians, they will tell you with a straight face, they avoid what is really happening, and they will say as if nothing happening. So the other thing I want to say, which is very interesting, is me, I've been listening to the president here carefully. He said the country is not animal farm, and I actually realized he must be reading the animal farm. Because at the same time you have said that they are reviving the Unduma number. They campaigned against the Unduma number. But I'm reminded in the animal farm there is 2 characters there. There is Napoleon and the Sinombo. Sinombo was brilliant. He drew the windmill. And they said that it is going to supply the life of the animals. Napoleon came and he pinned on those plants because he pinned without offering an alternative. Now, eventually, after he overthrew Sinombo, he brought the same plants as now his. You understand? To solve the problem of the animals. So, I like the president reminding what why there was so many animal farm, so that when the Uduma number comes back, they know why it has come back. When the BBI comes back, they know in what direction is coming back. But let me say this. One thing I'm liking about Kenya Kwanza administration. This country has slept for 60 years. The Kenya Kwanza has woken up this country and is not going back to sleep. And what is the beauty about chasing these people about taxes is because at one time there has to be an equalizer. And the Kenya Kwanza want to be that equalizer. And I want them to proceed in that direction, because eventually they will catch up with everyone. Eventually. Take it from me. So if they don't do it, you see, God works in mysterious ways. In the political lexicon, there is a law, an immutable law which you cannot jump over. It's called the law of unintended consequences. That what you really want to do, not what eventually happens. You see, Hitler was around here, Adolf Hitler, the leader of the Nazi Germany. Hitler wanted to create a super race and kill all the black people and all the other people who he didn't think they needed to live on the planet Earth. He ended up liberating them. In fact, Hitler is the Jesus of black people, oppressed people everywhere. Because if there was Hitler did not engineer the war in Europe, which gave an opportunity for European powers to finish each other. British would be sitting on us here today in this country. In America, women went to factories to make food and clothes for the military. Black people were drafted in the army, others went to the Air Force. After the war, people demanded their independence. And most of us got it thanks to Adolf Hitler. So when you see somebody taking an action,
I'm a bit squeamish if we thank Adolf Hitler.
You see, people don't
I feel
this is how God works.
My blood curdling. Maybe some of the viewers who also listening, their blood is curdling.
No, it's just because they have they don't understand that the pangas we took here as the Mau Mau, without Hitler having done our job in Europe, would not have worked. So you need to I told you the law of unintended consequences.
Yes, unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences.
We ought not to be thankful also to
so what's happening here, whether this is up to Uhuru Kenyatta or whoever it is, the law of unintended consequences will operate. Everybody will come into that bracket. You need to encourage the Kenya Kwanza government to move in this direction of equalizing all Kenyans.
Right, Brian Weke, let's hear from you. And we need to gravitate this discussion now also to the office of a DPP. Also, there's a conference ongoing. But let's hear from you first.
Thank you, Ndhiwa. First, when I listen to my friend, Senator Moora, he just sounds like the plan.
Yes.
The plan says everything and anything, but does not commit to anything.
Yes.
When you hear his big words, 25% of GDP, we borrow less. The promise is that they will deal with debt. When they checked in, what is the first thing they did? They are borrowing. So, I don't know. Now, the Kenya Kwanza got it very right from the beginning. Initially, when they checked in, when they were declared president, and subsequently their win was affirmed by the Supreme Court, the country was willing to move on. The Azimio team were clueless. They were very quiet. Nothing was happening. Then eventually they started campaigning in the name of two things. Number one, going back to say thank you to certain places. And number two, the housing, affordable housing issue. You go to Homa Bay, you open, you launch the affordable housing and speak to the people. You go to Kirinyaga, all these places, attend the church. As Honorable Kirwa says, you forget to mention Jesus Christ many times and mention individuals. Now, they are the ones who have actually awakened the opposition. These guys were quiet. They had agreed that there is a president and there is a presidency and it is a fait accompli issue. Then all of a sudden, you're told there is no handshake. We are in charge. So they are the ones who have actually reignited the opposition. Now, I've just come back from the village and the people are asking me, Weke, these rallies, what will they cure? And people think that we can go back to election. And I told them, once the president has been declared by the IEBC and subsequently it has been affirmed by the Supreme Court, that is a fait accompli. But where I sit, this is a blessing in disguise. And if you ask me, Ndhiwa, one of the key things we need to discuss in this country, we sweep things under the rug. One of the key things we have to deal with now is the issue of the audit of elections in this country. We need to, if William Ruto is serious, the way he claims he is serious in dealing with election fraud and malfunction, then ideally we need to set up an independent team to audit the elections in this country. You know, year after year in terms of elections, there has been claims of fraud. There is need to do a proper systems audit in terms of elections in this country. There is need to conduct a proper legal audit in this country. There is need to look at the technology that we administered in the last election. There is need to do a proper administrative audit in terms of elections. And you see the problem we have in this country. When I was the CEO of IED, we mentioned this. We said you cannot have political parties appointing commissioners to run an independent commission and you expect them to be independent. Look at what happened. The people who were appointed by William Ruto when he was in power, and the people who were appointed by Uhuru Kenyatta when he was in power, you could see there was a split decision. We cannot continue running the commission like that. We have to look at the powers of the chairman as against the secretariat. That has to be done, and it has to be an independent issue. Now we are quickly removing commissioners so that we prepare for the next elections and ensure that the president appoints the commissioners, who in turn, they will not be independent. And that is the conversation that we need to have in this country. That is a conversation that we need to have as a country. That is a conversation we need to have now in this panel. Because what needs to happen with all these things that the opposition is doing is that we need to have an independent process of selection panel that will vet the commissioners. We need to ensure that the commissioners that are there is a law that provides for independent commission. The current law actually provides for commissioners that will lean towards the appointing authority. Because again, the president is the one who chooses who becomes a commissioner. That will not deal with the problems that we have in this country. And if you ask me, we want any child who's a son of nobody, Mwaura's son, professor's daughter, if they run for elections, it has to be one man, one vote. And that is where the conversation ought to be. This is done. We have a sitting president and we respect him and love him, but we need to prepare for better elections moving forward.
Right. Let's hear from Ora before we come to you, Professor, because if you say the president, this is a preserve of the president in terms of appointing the commissioner, that's not really entirely true, because that is channeled also through Parliament. You can maybe
eventually the president is given 3 names.
Yes, eventually it's given 3 names.
Out of the 3 names, he chooses. That ought not to happen. Because once you, and he is not obliged to take number 1.
These are vetted names.
I think
these are names who parliaments also have their blessings.
Not even that.
I think I'm the one who's to respond. Let me say this. Look at the law. It's very clear. The president is supposed to appoint people based on a certain criteria. He is not just going and saying, do you have a panel of 4? I am choosing these ones because they are on my side. And by the way, let's just not lie to one another. I don't think there will be any foolproof procedure that would make people to be non-partisan, because even if we are to do an election here, everyone here will vote for someone or for something. So let us not lie that there will be a situation where IEBC would seem to be impartial. The nature with which people originate to come to the commission may be partisan, but they are expected to work in a collegiate manner. And that is not what we witnessed in the last IEBC.
So impartiality is something we cannot achieve.
It is not foolproof. I am trying to say so, as long as it is the case. And also, let me make this point, that you cannot have a rudderless commission. By the end of the day, leadership is singular, is not plural. The chairman of the commission is the one who is accountable to the commission. And I'm very proud of the fact that Wafula Chebukati has actually finished his term, because it has become a graveyard. And I said that last time, that when you become an IBC commissioner, and Brian Weke has got experience now that he was a CEO of ELOG some time back, you go in there and you muddy your career. But I hope and believe that those who will be appointed following this new process, and it doesn't matter which political side you're in, that they will go in there and have an IBC that will also last for 6 years, the whole commission. But also allow me to give a rebuttal, Debal, because...
Before the rebuttal, I wanted to ask you, how can you be a leader if you're looking back and there's no one following you? Or the entire team is not really following you? Are you truly a leader?
No, what do you mean by nobody's following you? Chebukati had got 3 commissioners, there are 3 commissioners against 4.
Yeah, majority was not following him.
Who?
The majority is 4.
No, the majority were the handshake commissioners. I mean, honestly, we know when they were appointed.
See, now it's just
let me say this: that they were the handshake commissioners. There is no question about it. They came into power in, I think, is it November or thereabout, and they never delivered. So let's proceed and say this: when it comes to the issue of paying taxes, it is good for Kenyans to know that some people applied to be waived for 1.4 billion shillings. Tax exemption, it was stopped. It is good for people to know that a 5G license was issued for free to certain individuals, and they sold that 5G license at 4 billion to a telco. It's good for people to know also that when we talk about Huduma number, we are not talking about a physical card that was printed under the NIS budget of 16 billion. We are talking about a digital identity that will be given when you have been born, that will serve, to get you an ID, to get you a passport or whatever, for free. You get the point. It's not the big business that we have been talking about. So it's good to clarify that our agenda is different. And just to reiterate what Professor, or rather to clarify what Professor was saying, we want to do things differently. We are not the ones who are going to, wipe out. Our difference with the former regime was that the way they were doing things, even if the principle was right, but the process and the procedure was aimed at state capture. It was aimed at big business. It was aimed at some people benefiting at the expense of the idea that there is a problem that needs to be solved in the country, but people monetize it. That's the issue. And that's why we are saying we are actually very clear in our agenda. And I want to invite Brian Weke, who is trying to say here that the plan is not on detail. I can tell for sure, as an Azimio zealot, you've not read the plan. The plan is very clear. In fact, we even have a resourcing plan, for example, on infrastructure. That is why we are going the privatization way. That is why we are going the PPP way, in terms of how we are going to finance. And that is also why you are seeing President William Ruto, because of the cash crunch that is in this country, he is trying to get new investors from new markets like Korea, for example, so that then we are able to finance our budget. But I agree with you that you set us up for failure. And that is why when we now start talking about an economic agenda, you want to divert us back to politics. And we'll say, yes, if you want to go the politics way, we will meet you head on, we will match you up, but we still continue to implement the economic agenda.
Right. I wanted just to ask you on the issue of Huduma number, because looking also at the data, we have the Huru regime had printed at least 15 million cards of the Huduma number. And right now, instead of the Kenya Kwanza administration just giving credit also to the previous regime, you want to morph it into a digital ID, which we've not really gotten clarification. Why can't we just go full steam ahead with this project as a continuity? Because we have a projection of around how many? 35 million Kenyans that will have this Huduma number by 2026.
I think our administration is very clear that we have now the new digital economy. Remember, we're actually laying out fiber cables, 100,000 kilometers. You don't need a physical card. Today, all of us who are seated here, rarely do we use our cash. We actually, rarely will you find, if I ask you to give me 10,000 shillings here, you are likely not to give me, but at least you can send me an M-Pesa, if at all. So the future is digital. So when you have a digital identity, the BAO, you don't need the card. Remember, we have so many IDs that are lying at the chief's offices and whatever other places that are uncollected. Part of the reason why 8 million people did not vote is because some of them never actually took up their ID. But when you have a digital identity, that is a unique identifier that actually gives you access to government services. Remember also, we have a plan to have 5,000 government services online. They are digitized so that then you don't need to have the human agency that is the essence of corruption, you know, in terms of government services that are supposed to be for free. So when you now have, for example, when we are doing these campaigns, and maybe some of my friends here participated, one of the things that would help you to reach out to the people is to help in the distribution of Huduma number. You know, it's a very tedious, very costly, process. But already, somebody has already pocketed 16 billion shillings for printing the cards. We don't need 16 billion shillings to print those cards. We just need to have a platform, a digital platform. You go, you log in, you do your thing, you are able to access government services. This is a new way of doing business.
All right, so you're telling me that around 15 million cards have been printed. Those are physical cards, so we don't need these other cards. They will be digital.
Yes, we don't need a digital. We don't need a physical card. We need a digital online, identifier.
So what are we going to do with these 15 million cards?
They can be collected or not collected, but you are the same person who was telling me that another 20 million Kenyans deserve to have the cards, isn't it? So we will not ask the National Treasury to allocate another 20 billion or use the NIS project so that it's a big tender for big boys.
The president was part of this regime as well. Why are we all getting all the wiser right now, or that we need to go to digital? No, just a moment. Yeah, because this before we had the big fallout, there were actually two peas in a pod, right? And this Huduma number, when Kenyans were contesting it, that how are we also collecting the data of Kenyans without any legal framework? There is no even bill in the first place. Kenyans were stoutly against it. These are some of the issues that Kenyans will have been given opportunity to say, why can't we not really have the physical card? We go the digital way. Now we've wasted a whole 15 million cards being printed that won't be used because we're going the digital way.
I think the question should be asked to the former regime. First and foremost, remember.
We're taking scruples. With the fact that he knew, or the president knew when he was a deputy president, that we'll need the digital cards. Why not?
The one who sold it.
No, the president actually knew. The deputy president then was not allowed to be part of the implementing procedure of that one. By the time it was being done, it is Matiang'i who took up the role, or the roles of as principal assistant to the president. To be honest, we live in this country. So you cannot therefore come and say that it was actually his project. Because our way of doing things is different. Because we need to avoid this. Because remember, by the time the Kenya Kwanza administration came to power, we only had 300 government services online. The e-citizen M-Pesa number was actually a personal one. That money could not even be accounted for. Can you imagine? And at some point, it actually had about 5 billion shillings. This is a cartel-like behavior that we are finding in government that we need to unlock, the bar. So it's more than meets the eye. And that's what I'm telling you, it's big business. But when you have a free digital online service, you have now the Office of the Data Commissioner. If there are any issues that appertain to law that have not been addressed, I am very sure that is something that can be canvassed very easily at the National Assembly and the Senate and passed for the presidential assent. But we are going for the industrial revolution, and we have to prepare the country forthwith. In fact, we have 6 submarine fiber optics. Kenya is one of the highly connected countries in the world.
You're reading the plan, according to Weke. Now you're reading the plan. We'll come back to it.
Let's not read the plan.
All right, let's hear from Honorable Kirwa on this latest development so far, and what do you think about it as well, with the Huduma number and the digital way?
Well, I think the president is very innovative and is able to turn an idea that was in the shelf into his. He has just beaten the Huduma number, and now he's calling it digital ID. And, that is the irony of really being part of a regime and pretending not to be part of it. The second issue is that while I'm grateful that is the way we are going, it is also important that we do not spend a lot more resources doing the same thing over and over. I'm just reminding ourselves also of what Professor said much earlier, that BBI is in town. The office of the Chief Cabinet Secretary is what was suggested in BBI. And there are many other things that you are likely to see. So if there is anything that I give to the president, is very innovative. He's also very gifted in actually telling you the story in a fresh manner, that you forget this story was told by somebody else yesterday. Finally, on the issue of commissioners, I think it's important that we become more and more transparent. The IPPG commissioners that ran the ECK in 1997 and 2002 made the bill, and that's why there were fewer challenges, despite the fact that there was a petition against President Moi in 1997. But President Moi, being a gifted political professor, had changed the law that if you are serving the person you are petitioning against, you must serve him personally. And President Kibaki, who was the main complainant, because he believed that he had won the election, because the first day, by 3 o'clock, President Moi complained that the elections had been rigged. By 6 o'clock, the Electoral Commission chairman at that time talked about another voting the following day. And that is when some business was done in a way that President Moi retained the seat. But President Kibaki lost that petition on technicality, in the sense that he did not have access to the president for 28 days, which is a period that is required. You know, I say this, Debal, because it is good to put into perspective historical events. Because at times they have been saying Raila complained in 97. The main complainant in 1997 was President Kibaki, who believed his victory had been stolen. But Raila and others, Charity Ngilu and others, they were giving him some kind of backup. Otherwise, the main complainant was Kibaki. It was not Raila. So at times when people rant that is Raila complained this, it is not entirely true. But then, 2007, the commissioners were largely appointed by Kibaki without the involvement of other players. And that may explain the fiasco that came up and that created the post-election violence. So some of these events, they assist us to know how do we manage the future in a better way, so that we don't think that we are just dealing with Raila. Raila is an individual, but the electoral process in Kenya will be here with us for the balance of the time, as long as democracy is still the language in town. And therefore, when we are dealing with something, let us not have the lenses of Raila. Let us not look at things through the lenses of Raila or William Ruto, because William Ruto, if he wins the next election, after that he will go home, unless he wants to be a Putin. Otherwise, after 10 years, he will go home like any other former president.
Thank you.
Yep.
Right. Well, we do for station break right now, 6 minutes to the top of the hour. And you can see on this editorial cartoon, this is Huduma number. By the way, the state has, just to let you know, it is going to print 30 million Huduma number cards in 3 years. And it is expected by June 30th, 2026, at least 5.2 million Kenyans will have obtained it. But looking at this editorial cartoon, you can see when he was in government, he was throwing away bricks. If we may just have back the cartoon, and now he is in government, or he is actually in the reins right now. This is the President William Ruto. According to Victor, what he has done is that he's couping, from that particular